For the past few months, I've racked my brain hoping to find some deficiency in his character that I could share with you. Well, I've come to the conclusion that Tom's brain is one of nature's great masterpieces. Flawless and perfect, like a beautifully crafted, unique Stradivarius. Tom harmoniously balances the analytical, rational left side of the brain and the creative and imaginative right hemisphere. A symptom of Tom's abnormally efficient brain is that he has an unnatural abundance of skills. On the cricket field, he's a masterful all-rounder, batting, bowling, fielding, or wicket-keeping. He's at ease elegantly jumping hedgerows on horseback. He's fanatical about cooking and has a comprehensive arsenal of recipes memorized and filed away in his orderly mind. He's an accredited pilot, a trained and proficient silversmith, a skilled and varied guitarist, capable of finger-picking delicate acoustic melodies, or blasting out noisy psychedelic rock. He can bring a room full of people alive with his fast-paced boogie-woogie piano, but he's also happy to turn his hand to the bass, as he did with his old band, the Animal Rescue Unit, a few of whom I think are here tonight. The point I'm making is that Tom is good at everything he does. But despite his plentiful abilities, he's modest to the core. Perhaps his greatest strength is his sociability. He delights in the company of others, interacting with those around him with the same meticulous level of care and consideration that he applies to all things. He turns drinking into an art form and goes to parties with the confident swagger of a well-trained racehorse doing what he does best. I think it's safe to say that it's from Tom's father's side of the family that he inherited his deep passion for practicality. Tom experiences a profound otherworldly bliss when he's writing up itineraries, reading guidebooks, and booking huge dinners in restaurants yet to be built. A few months ago, I asked him how many people would be attending this celebration. He replied, around 283. Give or take 0. Tom's exquisite brain is in many ways similar to a supercomputer, but it's not in any way robotic or boring. He also has an alarmingly spontaneous side to him, which I believe comes from our grandmother, Bindi. I once had the misfortune to bump into a very drunk Tom in the bathroom of a London restaurant. The cubicle door opened, we looked one another in the eye. He started growling like a Ferrari, revving its engine, before screaming like a banshee and jumping on top of me, knocking me to the floor and smashing everything in the room. This reckless aspect of Tom's character is like a rare flower that only blooms when it's been drenched in vodka martinis and crack. Another occasion that I saw it was on my 16th birthday. A few of us wandered up Swallow Street, nervously hoping to get into a nightclub. Out of the blue, Tom started screaming at the top of his voice, a nonsensical stream of consciousness rant, consisting of the rudest words and phrases his formidable Nail-a-Leyland brain could conjure up. Upon our arrival at the club, we were informed that the proprietor had already forewarned the bouncer that not only were we not allowed in, but we were also banned for life. In a twist of fate, Tom's sister Violet and later his future wife Alice would both get jobs at the very same nightclub, welcoming Tom, the blacklisted troublemaker, back with open arms. Tom has always had, since childhood, an immense capacity to see the potential for fun in any situation. I remember when we were children on a skiing holiday in Switzerland, every day I'd watch the 10-year-old Tom struggling around on the slopes, smashing into strangers and falling all over the place, inevitably attracting a small crowd around him. Some would try to help him up, and others would just gather to catch a look at this terrible child who was causing so much havoc on the ski slopes. Just when he looked at his most hopeless, as though he was certain to fall over for the 20th time, he would reveal to his audience that Tom, of course, was a precociously talented skier at the age of 10. He'd zoomed down the hill at impossible speed, leaving a crowd of irritated adults in his wake with the sound of his laughter. I think the time when I became closest to Tom was when he returned from travelling and started at art school. He moved into his own flat in Chelsea, and I was living a few doors down at our grandmother's, and we became neighbours. Our parents' generation would later christen the flat the Den of Iniquity. It was clear that Tom felt he had a newfound independence that he intended to take full advantage of. Tom would hold court hosting dinners and parties, always armed with a big jug of some new cocktail that he perfected. Tom, of course, is a virtuoso at hosting. He was constantly working on new artworks made of postcards and Polaroids and playing songs on his Telecaster, whilst developing his deep love and obsession with music from the 60s. His fashionable art school friends would turn up to college in flamboyant and ridiculous outfits, and Tom felt obliged to compete with them. And so his dress sense too became increasingly outlandish. This culminated with me meeting him one night in a nightclub. I saw him across the room, bringing tears of joy to all those around him with his signature dance move, the kangaroo. A bit like that. He was confidently wearing one of our grandmother's bright red woolen jackets. He had a top hat, thick eyeliner, and a beard. He bounced over to me and showed off his ear, which he pierced himself earlier in the evening. But instead of putting an earring through the hole, he'd instead placed a huge blue feather. I think that for a brief period, Tom saw himself as some kind of undiscovered bohemian rock god, a wild young troubadour gallivanting around the streets of Chelsea as though it were 1969. But then one day, Tom had a brainwave that would change his life forever. He realized that the best way he could shock and confuse his fashionable, unconventional art school colleagues was by turning up to college wearing a sensible, well-cut tweed suit, along with a classic side parting, a timeless look that Tom's remained committed to ever since. Tom's staunch love of good manners and tradition is a brave and radical thing in today's age. On a night out, the scruffier the occasion, the smarter Tom dresses. If he suspects there's a chance he'll end up in a grimy basement listening to Gabba, he'll be sure to go to the extra effort to wear collar stiffeners and a tie. Tom gave his all to his decade spent in London, but I've always known that his heart is in the country, and the married life in the countryside is what he's always yearned for. And with his dear darling Alice, who I've also been a friend of for a long time, I'm certain he's found the perfect companion with whom to embark on this new chapter. Tom's so gifted at the art of life, and I know that together with Alice, he'll build a wonderful home and a wonderful family because they're wonderful people. Join me in raising a toast to Tom and Alice. To Tom and Alice.